What's up, everybody? We are back for another episode of Warp Factor Fiction, a chronological analysis of Star Trek on screen. Guys, this is the fourth episode that we're doing, and we're covering season 2 of Enterprise. You may have seen episode 1. If you haven't, make sure to get back there. Of course, this is a Patreon-based show, so go. We appreciate you supporting, but go tell more. Tell everybody about Trek and bring them on here as we discover and analyze Star Trek all the way through.
All the way.
Every
in
bit
entirety.
I you know what? Before we get started on season 2, back half of season 2 for Enterprise, what is one thing in this whole journey that maybe you're not the most excited to watch?
As we continue on, coming up, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, Enterprise actually hurts a little later in the later seasons.
That's fair.
There's a few episodes that get wonky, and some character choices that I'm not a big fan of.
I agree. Mine is wholeheartedly the original series animated series.
Oh, that one's going to be really hard.
That's going to be that because that is 70s claymation, not claymation, but the clay animation that they did.
Mm-hmm.
That company that kind of did that whole sort of look to those 70s cartoons, and that's going to be a tough one.
It's going to be really hard.
You know,
it's going to be really hard.
And now, mind you, it's not just a Trek thing with the animated. It is a lot of animation from that time. I'm not a fan of
Rikki Tikki Tavi. Ones like that. Rin Tin Tin was kind of hard. All that old animation style. It's going to be difficult.
I was not a fan of 70s animation. I will say that straight up. So
you are well on record.
But we're not there yet. We are still with the NX-01, right in season 2, right smack dab. Whereas if you heard in the last episode, we were fans of. We really like this season. And
this is definitely one of the better seasons. One of my favorite seasons of Trek, honestly. The stories they put in this allow for some cool ground rules that eventually get played on and added on to later.
And I do love that aspect. I love when you go back to like a prequel series and you have this entire, and it really only works unless you have this entire established universe that you've created. And then when you go back and do a prequel series, you really can fit in those things that you like about it. I think a lot of that was missed on the Star Wars prequels, which we are also fans of, but they didn't, like, this does a better job of it than that did.
Absolutely, because this keeps all the rules. And what it does is it builds on the ethos that already exists and then just shows you how they got there.
Yeah.
And it's really fun how they did that. And I really like it. And it's a wonderful adventure series. It's a lot of fun because there's much more excitement to it because you never know what's going to happen. They're the only ones out there and they're brand new at it, so it's wild. The stakes are super high.
They are so high, right?
Mm-hmm. And they definitely show that. You get how high the stakes are. And I think this was a show that didn't need to push that like they did in one of the episodes in this show that we'll be talking about.
Which,
episode 23.
Getting into the philosophy of Enterprise and kind of where we know it comes from, because again, the Prime Directive doesn't exist, the Federation doesn't exist. It is so far away from any type of Federation or anything that it gets hinted at in these seasons in the show, but it doesn't really it doesn't get touched down on as heavily as it does, and of course everything else.
Exactly. I mean, this is at a time when we still have Mako. There's still an army. That's something that eventually there is no more army. It gets disbanded. And they touch on that in the Kelvin timeline with the U.S.S. Franklin in Star Trek Beyond.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a former Mako commander who then they gave a captain's chair to.
I love that too. And I loved how they add to that element of like, we were trying to move past that, our past of the war, of the World War III, the eugenics war, and being a warlike type of species, we're trying to move past that desperately. And I love the element that they add into this because it plays heavily into this season leading into 3.
Agreed.
So I just thought that was a very cool element that I kind of want to touch down on. And it's, as we go on, we're going to go, so how you guys know we did in the last episode, we're going to do it in this episode too. We're going to go episode by episode, kind of explaining a small summary on them talk about the ones we really want to highlight, and then we'll go through a few other things, and you'll have your episode that we love to do.
And thank you so much. This is for our Patreons because we love and appreciate y'all. So for that, we are going through every episode, every series, chronologically speaking, because of how much we love this series and how much we love and appreciate y'all.
We're even going to watch the god awful Next Gen episode that is very racist. If we're going to watch them all, we got to watch them all.
Got to watch them all.
I don't want to, but we got to.
Well, yeah, I think it's really important. Shines a light on how far we've come and what it means in the Trek ethos to have an episode like that.
And I want to, and when we get to that episode, I'd love to talk about it a little bit more, and maybe we can get a guest on for it as well. But how the crew, the actors and the crew knew this is a bad idea right from the beginning. Like, we don't even want to film this one. So that self-awareness kind of plays in. I like that.
It does.
But okay, so Enterprise. Now we are starting with season 2, episode 14, and that is called Stigma.
Stigma, one of my absolute favorites because we get Fiesel Phlox.
Yep. Oh my God. So we got it. Talking about this episode. So T'Pol is diagnosed with a possibly fatal neurological disease, and as a result, because of the mind meld that she got from the first season, that was against her will. And so she and Phlox are working together secretly from the captain to try and find out if there's treatments at this medical seminar, if you will. And then Phlox wants to go talk to the Vulcans and see if there's any type of treatment for it. And we get a lot of surprises and a lot of things, a light shined on who the Vulcans are and how they feel about it. But we get a very cool other B sort of storyline with Trip and one of Phlox's wives, and how she really wants to sleep with him, and he is trying his hardest to get away from her.
Yeah, it's hilarious. So there's the two parts of this episode that I absolutely love. Is John Billingsley plays Phlox. He's so fantastic, and in this episode, he really shines in the way he's caring to try to care for T'Pol. And I love the fact that we see T'Pol dealing with PTSD. It's a struggle. It's hard with what this potential thing is, and we're seeing it handled very oddly by the Vulcans. The fact that they want to ship her off basically to an institution and just have her locked up for a while where she can meditate for a few years. Not the greatest, not the best. I mean, I'd be okay with that actually.
Yeah, because it's this fatal neurological disease. Just it kind of breaks her down. And we see it going forward, like where her emotions become more into play, and in this is a big thing. All that sect of Vulcans are very not illegal, but they are very frowned upon within the Vulcan community and society in a whole. Yes, that they have no cure. They don't even look for it. They just want them to die out.
Yep, they have no way of handling it. So they're like, it's better if you're just not here. Yeah, that's their way of handling it. Pretty messed up.
God. Yeah, it really is. I mean, this show became very good about making you dislike the Vulcans.
Yeah, the Vulcans are just kind of jerks, and understand and seeing the importance of compassion and how that empathy makes us starkly different.
Oh yeah,
and does eventually come into affect Vulcan society a bit. We do kind of taint them with empathy.
As we go on, and I 100% agree with you on that. And it is very cool to see that these two type of species that are very different in how they handle things coming together to work together for the first time. Like the Vulcans could have just stopped by in first contact, hey, good luck with the warp, and then just left. But they did stay close for all of these years to help, kind of get us ready and get us going. And I like that almost Big Brother type of program.
Yeah.
That the galaxy has for each other.
Right. Yeah. We'll help out people who aren't jerks.
But then they're jerks.
Then they're jerks. But Fiesel Phlox in this is wonderful because she wants to sleep with Trip. We know that Phlox has 3 wives, that his wives have, I think, 5 husbands or something outrageous. They are just open with their sexualities. No reason, nothing to hide for them. They're all about being open with it. It's a wonderful society. And Fiesel wanted to throw down with Trip.
Hardcore.
And big time. Yeah, she wanted to get in that. Oh, and And unfortunately, he trepidatious, which understandable. The guy's been impregnated. He's already had a bad encounter with an alien. So, you know, I get it. Pump the brakes. Little fear there, and also for him, it's the respect factor.
Yeah.
He can't get over the idea of sleeping with another man's wife. It's just a weird thing for him. Whereas Phlox on the other side is like, yeah, yeah, do it, do it. Like he wants to compare notes almost.
It's like, did you have fun? It's so odd to me, like as we go on and the more we learn about um Phlox and like his society, because it comes into play later about how just on both sides, like it comes into play quite a bit at the second half of the season
Yeah,
with Phlox, and to see all sides of him, like he's a man of integrity, but he's also a man who's like, listen, this is how I was raised, but in this situation is very much this is how my society does things, and like we're not
hmm
going to hold it against her or anything like that. That's not what we do.
absolutely. It's very strange how the two look so different because you've got again Fiesel is a brilliant engineer in her own right. So
Oh yeah.
she is phenomenally intelligent and has a great career ahead of her. So it's not like she needs anybody. And
Yeah,
that's the beauty in this is how they are just an open, evil, even equal society.
100% agree. I do dig that, how both storylines worked in this.
hmm
Not always on this show especially do both the A storyline and the B storyline really sort of work out together and are both interesting,
hmm
but in this one, 100% for sure, it was a very good episode.
This one because the it gave us also really good comic relief, and there's
Yeah.
some hard stuff on the way. So I think you getting
So
this one was nice.
oh, absolutely. So we get to the our second episode. We're talking about episode 15, ceasefire, and this is where the Andorians and the Vulcans are battling. They're at war with each other, and Shran wants to create a peace accord, and he asks Archer to come in and just stand between and sort of broker that peace.
And it's a really big step because
Yeah.
we start to see the very foundation in this moment of what will eventually be the Federation when we
Yeah.
have an Andorian and a human and a Vulcan all standing together and talking.
And
So it's
oh yeah, I was just going to add to it that it sort of the episode sort of goes. Of course, so you guys know there's some drama to it. A special guest star in this, Susie Plaxton, who's been on. She played Worf's wife,
hmm
Kalar, I think her name was.
yep, Kalar. Yep.
And then she was also came back in Voyager as the female Q.
hmm
So she comes back quite a bit. She's like Jeffrey Combs in that, right, where she steps back in and does a lot for Star Trek. But
Exactly. And it's great to see because there's always a bunch of different character actors that they return to. So in
yeah,
this one, when we get Jeffrey Coombs and Susie Plaxton is fantastic.
yeah, and the fact that she plays the saboteur trying to stop this whole accord, we see a lot in terms of who Shran is
hmm
and why that's going to be a big element down the line in
Yeah.
creating the Federation and
I
being
mean,
willing to
just
create the Federation.
yep, just being an absolute man of honor.
Yeah,
That's
I
really the
love
thing.
Shran.
He's completely stand up and he's such a good character. And it's weird for someone who is so powerful in his command
Yeah,
of a warlike culture. And at the same token, he's respected the whole way through, and he's tired of war. So it's really
yeah,
fun to get to some more depth on the Andorians.
100%. So as we go on, the next episode 16, we have future tense. This was a one that really resonated with me too much. Like it seemed
hmm
interesting. What we get is they find a capsule in space. It was actually a starship, but unlike any technology they've ever seen, there is a body in it. And once they start to sort of dissect and poke and prod and do testing, and find out it's a human body, and the Suliban start to attack, and the Tholians start to attack the ship, trying to get not only that starship back but the body because it is from the future.
And it's loaded with different codes of DNA. So
Yeah.
there's all sorts of different stories it could unlock. So everyone's going after it. Interesting episode. I agree with you. It didn't super resonate, but I did really enjoy. There were a couple great performances, and we got to see the start of some more of the the things that begin to stick with us,
Mhm.
like the red alert, tactical alert,
Yeah,
things
yeah,
like that.
for sure. And the thing I liked about with this episode, because I'm not a big Suliban fan,
Hmm.
and once they kind of went away, I was kind of cool with it. But this was an episode where it kind of gave us a little bit more information on the temporal warp, which again is another thing I wasn't too keen on knowing. But if you're going to stick it down my throat, I might as well learn about it.
Right.
So it was just one of those, but didn't resonate too well with me.
I have to say, acting was great across the board, though. Everyone did a really good job. It was just story overall. I agree. After coming off of a couple of really strong episodes, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
little filler.
The next episode is Canamar. Archer and Trip are accused of smuggling and sent to a penal colony called Canamar. While Enterprise manages to negotiate their release, a mutiny breaks out on the prison ship, and now it takes Archer and Trip to try and win them back over. Win
Classic
the
Con
ship
Air
back over.
episode.
It is. You said this when we were talking about it, and I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but I just want to add to it. Like, this is such a Con Air episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't
100%.
see it at first, but now I do.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is broken down the exact same way it is in Con Air. Well, very similar
Yeah.
in that opening way when they first take it. A fun episode. It was a lot of fun. I think there were some great performances. I think it went really well. The story progressed well. I loved how they portray all the different aliens. That we're really getting the right understanding of all the different species we're up against. So it was pretty rad.
It really was. And I like how the different aliens interacted. Like, Trip kept getting annoyed by the one next to him because he couldn't stop talking, just because he was nervous. How Archer kind of handled it. We got to see him play sort of a con man sort of situation, which you don't really get from like the Picards and things like that. So it's kind of cool to see.
No, it definitely showed more of his maverick, think from the cuff. He's got a different idea. It's a different time. It's a different era of thought. So it was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next episode is The Crossing. Enterprise is held captive by non-corporeal beings who claim to be explorers, and they're taking over their bodies little by little all over the ship, and they refuse to be released. So getting into this one a bit, let's talk about it a little bit, because I didn't love this episode.
Yeah, I understand this one was kind of hard to fall in love with. It harkened back to any of the body snatchers, any of the things where body horror, where you get taken over and then kicked out to a different plane of existence, is pretty weird. It's pretty odd. This is definitely something that Star Trek has dealt with before. And it's fun seeing how they do it in this one. It's swallowing up in that big ship, like the giant ship is cool. I thought that was neat.
And they had never seen anything at that point like that big.
Yeah, I mean, this is monstrous. And they had no idea what it was, and it just shows up and eats them. It just swallows them whole. Good episode overall, but I think there were certain people who, when they turned, it was really cool. Like Malcolm, when Dominic Keating turns, when Linda Park turns. I think it's really fascinating the way they did that. But they had to lock away almost half their crew before they were able to figure out the way to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it wasn't. I like the entity on board ones for the most part, but there's some that really just don't hit with me that well, and this turned out to be one of them. So
that's fair. The highlight was definitely Archer blowing it up.
Yeah, Archer just straight up.
Archer showed what an absolute don't mess with me and my people he is. Like, there is no chance of you being like, anyone else could come along and get snatched up. So he was like, nope, not gonna take that chance. Blows him up.
Yep, 100%. I don't know why I keep saying 100%. That seems really weird. I just agree with you, and I'm like 100%. I need to stop it.
You're on repeat with a lot of your words. You're just like,
I know.
Your clips.
I feel like I think I'm suffering through whatever T'Pol has.
Yeah,
I don't know. Bad mind meld.
Bad mind meld. Just throwing you off. It
because
feels
my emotion.
Like we did this just a day ago, so I don't know. Maybe some sort of strange deja vu.
I know, right? It's kicking me in the teeth.
Is it tripping you up?
Oh, that was good, but tough at the same time.
Oh, Lord.
We move on to episode 19, which is actually a very good one in my opinion. Is Judgment.
Yes.
The Enterprise lends aid to a group of accused rebels. Archer and Captain Archer gets taken by the Klingons to face a tribunal and charges for conspiring against the Klingon Empire. There's a lot more layers to it than that summary really gives. And to see because this isn't the first time we see it, but this is an early on human in front of the Klingon tribunal council, and it just nothing changed.
No, the Klingons love putting us on tribunal. I'm pretty sure because of that giant gauntlet that he uses as the mallet, this little thing. He loves that. That's what they always want to show us. The Klingons are like, look at my sweet judge mallet. Like my gavel is so cool. One of the
Thanos
great
walks
things
in with his gauntlet, and then he's just like, okay, bang, your
gauntlet
judge.
Battle.
Gauntlet battle.
So one of the great things about this episode is J.G. Hertzler, who's General Martok in DS9. We get him here as the advocate in judgment for Archer. Really fun episode because it's Archer centric, and we get to see him up against Klingons. So we get to see how annoying he is to Klingons, and how annoying humans will remain to Klingons throughout, and how we got there. Like, how do we get to the war? This is all starting. He just bristles from the beginning, man. He does everything a little wrong the whole time, and they wind up on Rura Penthe.
Yes. So, hold on one second. Can you check your mic real quick?
Yeah, you're better.
Okay, you're good. Okay. I hit the thing and it just I got to get the XLR back in. But anyway, none here nor there. All right. Okay, so I know we're starting. Yeah, so we get there, and of course that's famous for where Kirk and Bones were put in undiscovered country, that penal colony, and it's a nightmare. Was it the dilithium mines?
The dilithium mines, yep.
Yeah, so Archer's. So here's what screwed me up about this episode. Archer's sent there for life for helping refugees.
Yep.
And what's his name? His arbiter is sent there for a year.
Yeah.
And I love when he goes, yeah, I'll be out in a year, but most people don't live 6 months. You know, and it's just like Archer's there for life, like legit now, and his life is going to be 6 months long. Of course, the episode, which sets up a big thing in the future, he escapes. Yep, he pays off the guard and he gets out. His arbiter stays because he's like, I need to make real change, so I'm just going to do my sentence and then start working at it, you know. And I like that hopefulness to the end of the episode.
Agreed. It definitely gave a lightness, and it ended well, and also gave us a really fascinating look at what we're going to see over and over again from the Klingons.
My God, right?
It helps us understand that they kept the tradition, and they are no joke about their traditions.
Yeah, that's legit. Yeah, we get so that's a really good episode.
Strong, very strong episode.
You know, in any other like season, anything, I would say this is probably one of the best episodes of the season. But right after it, we get 3 of the best episodes of the season back to back.
I mean, amazing, yeah.
And that's Horizon is the next one, episode 20, which I'll let you take it away because I know this is one of your favorites.
This is one of my absolute tops. So Horizon is where we deal with Travis Mayweather going back to the Horizon, his old ship, where his father has passed away, and his brother is now in command. So it's a fascinating tale in brothers. Now, as someone who doesn't have a brother, like I have a sister, so it's a different life for me. You have brothers, so it's funny how we interact, because I see the brothers thing. You know what I'm saying? I see where we come from, just slightly different in how we start things in conversation. And it's great having that, because I feel like in this episode, Anthony Montgomery absolutely smashes it out of the park. I unfortunately don't remember who his brother is, who the actor is who played his brother, but was phenomenal as well. Did a great job.
I mean, well, it's funny you mentioned that you don't have any brothers. I do. I have brothers and sisters. You have a sister, and the dynamic too. We talked about this a little bit the other day as well, when we were preparing, was that all my friends are older brothers. Across the board. I am in my close friends group, I am the only younger brother.
Yeah.
Everyone else is just so like that dynamic and what you see here
Hmm.
really plays into it. And I love that we both get to see it as different sides
Yeah,
of it. And
it's
you
fantastic for that.
you said something the other day about Travis in this episode. And it was like really profound for the episode, especially, but it's a good one. Let me help you try to get out of your own way, I believe
Yeah,
is what you said.
yeah. When Travis talks about that, so that's a really great part that Travis brings up to his brother when he's like, "Let me," like he is so intelligent now and grown that he's trying to assist him that way. Uh, yeah, yeah. I don't know what further I said.
Well, no, I mean that was kind of it, but we were talking about that dynamic with them, and
Hmm.
for me, I think I brought it more into how what we get to see in terms of how these ships work out in the world, out in the galaxy.
Hmm.
Like they're transport ships. So like, but to see how they deal with these pirates and like, because we usually only see Starfleet.
Yeah, we don't believe that there are things out there. We forget about
Yeah,
the transport ships and the fact that there are Orion pirates, which means there's piracy going on. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And this is at a time when there's barely any law. Like we do not interact with many species out here. Like the Romulans, of course, they have a minefield, and if you get near their stuff, they're either going to blow you up or shoot you.
yeah,
It's ridiculous. So it's a fascinating look into the other side of the world that's happening around Starfleet as Starfleet is growing in necessity for some of these freighters to continue to be able to operate without the pirates. So it's interesting to see how all of this is going to grow into the Starfleet we know.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so I did like that inside look. And of course his best friend who walked in said two lines and left.
Oh man, that was ridiculous. Like that's the most absurd, unnecessary character, and it upset me so much. So this girl, this blonde-haired, beautiful young woman, is sitting on Mayweather's bed. She says hi. They clearly have an exchange that they have known each other for their entire lives. Could be close, could have maybe been something, maybe a romantic interest. Maybe we could have had something wonderful. This woman is on screen for what, maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes
Yeah,
of
about no, I wouldn't
conversation.
even say a minute. She was
They go
in
back
and
and
out.
forth, and then she never comes back.
Yeah,
They
and
never
it's so
return to her. Nothing.
they never even mention her, but they kind of make it sound like they were friends as kids, and
Yeah.
there's something that was left unresolved between
Mhm.
them, or maybe like they were dated as teenagers or whatever. They never
Yeah.
say, and she leaves. You're right, and then they never mention it again.
Never. So much opportunity for growth. This episode set up the Travis Mayweather like growth story because we got to see where he has already made it to, how much further he's come, and where he could potentially go. I mean, the
Yeah,
guy has gobs of anywhere that Anthony Montgomery has put forward for Travis Mayweather, and instead he just kind of fizzles.
and I love the hatred almost. Like, why do you care about Archer? Because he keeps trying to tell him, like, well, Captain Archer would handle it this way. It would do this, and like the
Yep,
respect he has for Archer really plays into this.
it
And
really does, and we get to see that. So, and Corey Mendel Parker is the gentleman who plays Paul Mayweather, his brother.
nice,
So
very
I just
nice.
wanted to make sure I got that out there because he was awesome. He
He
really
was very
deserves
good.
mention. He was fantastic. I mean, they could have brought them back for an episode,
I wish they did actually.
right?
Instead of trying to pretend to be the expand. No, like, we'll get there when we get there.
We're not there yet.
All right, next episode is The Breach. So, at Dr. Flox's request, Enterprise attempts to retrieve three Denobulan scientists from the planet Xanatoris, where the government has ordered all off-worlders to evacuate within 3 days.
Yeah, they really don't like aliens.
Yeah. Tucker, Reed, and Mayweather navigate a series of labyrinth underground caves in search of the scientists. Meanwhile, Enterprise lends assistance to a damaged ship fleeing the planet. Dr. Phlox faces an ethical dilemma when one of the refugees of the ship refuses life-saving treatment. The patient, an Antarian, holds a grudge against Phlox stemming from the war between their races 300 years prior.
Yeah, it was brutal.
But it's such an amazing episode because the B story where they're kind of going into the caves was cool, and I like that they saw a lot of danger in it.
Agreed. It was a lot of fun in that one because we get another away team stuff. And
Yeah,
me and my away team stuff,
you love the
especially with
away team.
these two. When we get Malcolm and Trip together, they're just so perfect because they turn into bickering Bettys over something. One of them is never happy in their
Nope.
interactions, and it's hilarious. They love each other, but they bicker all the time.
All the time. It's truly amazing, and I really like this episode for that reason. But the biggest reason is what Dr. Phlox goes through and what we learn about him.
Mm.
Accepting the Centurions request of he does not want to be treated by Phlox, even though Phlox can save his life,
Mm-hmm.
and the duality of what Archer and he are going through with this, with Archer saying, you need to do this, you need to just
Yeah.
do it, you're a doctor. But you put it really well about the Hippocratic Oath, and I'd love for you to talk and expound on
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. That's one of the best points in this episode is there's a point where uh Archer is arguing with Phlox to make him to try to sway him, to convince him that he should do it's the right thing. And then instead, in his last moment, is like, all right, well, I order you. And Phlox straight up says no. And
Yeah.
that's terrifying. You can't do that. That's your captain. That's a totally different thing. But in that battle, he brings up the Hippocratic Oath, and Phlox immediately knocks it down, saying, "Do no harm." It's Hippocratic Oath is antiquated because the will of the patient is completely ignored in that. He's like, and how is that fair? So it's a fantastic play into the idea that an alien species that is as advanced as the Denoblians have this completely different idea that maybe you should shut up and listen to the patient. It's
Yeah.
an interesting, odd take, which inevitably does weigh on his mind, and he does what for Phlox believes to be the right thing. So it's pretty cool.
And the right thing being, and not to give anything away too much, is that he
Mhm.
actually goes and he listens
Mhm.
and talks, and that's the convincing. So, and there's a lot said there, so I'm not giving that away, but you should go check it out for sure.
It's a beautiful story of intolerance and how we're supposed to grow out of it eventually, but how hard it is bred into us sometimes.
So, all right, so the next episode we have is Cogenitor, and this is Enterprise encounters a hypergiant star. While there, they make first contact with the Vissians, a technologically sophisticated race with 3 genders. While making quick friends and eagerly learning about the advanced technology, Trip gets curious about the Vissians' 3rd gender, known as the Cogenitor, which is crucial to the Vissian reproductive process. Against the wishes of the Vissians, Trip befriends the Cogenitor and encourages it to defy its culture's boundaries, which by the Vissians are made aware and are angered by. This is a very heavy episode.
It really is. And it plays really strong into how the Federation will eventually have to walk that line of respecting other cultures that we don't understand, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's a hard episode. It was beautifully done. It's a magnificent episode. It's easily one of the top 5 of the season. It deals with that whole third sex very well, giving an entirely different skew on how things are looked at by a different society, like the way it potentially could be. One of the best parts about Star Trek is how they just reinvent ideas constantly. Like any of these things could be. We don't know, infinite possibilities. So just play around with it. And Enterprise does a great job playing with it most of the time.
Yeah, this one did a good job though with
Mhm.
especially with Archer, and to see how involved in the first season, as we talked about, he was in really breaking the Prime Directive in a lot of ways,
All the
and
time.
all the time, and but realizing but the nice part about his arc in the first season was he was learning from each experience. Like, wow, okay, I did something positive here, that's great, and then an episode later, it's like, no, you catastrophically screwed people and
Mhm.
other species, and it's like, okay, we need a rule, so like he was
Yep.
started calling for it, and to see him go after Trip at the end of this and really lay into him, which we've never
Yeah.
seen him do with anyone before, and really lay into him to the point where Trip realizes I screwed up, because he gave this Cogenitor a wealth of knowledge and learning how to read and things like that in just a few days. And what it did to that Cogenitor which I think chose a gender at the end. She chose as a
She
woman,
did.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for her, then she comes in and for her to choose based on all this knowledge she brought in and what it does to her is heartbreaking.
Oh, it's brutal. It is absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
And it was really well done, very well acted.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed this episode all the way through. Like you said, Archer shines in the end. And Trip, it's great to see that what happens with the negative effects of white knighting, kind
Yeah.
of when you stick your nose in where it doesn't belong. Sometimes you just have to learn and accept things at face value. So it was really great to see that.
Yeah. And then we get to the next episode, which is episode 23, which is the penultimate Borg episode, Regeneration.
Yep.
An
This was an
Arctic,
episode.
an Arctic research team makes a startling find: cybernetic creatures, Borg, buried in the ice. When the revived aliens seize control of a spacecraft, it's up to Archer to keep them from contacting the collective and threatening Earth.
Yep.
Yeah. That's about all we got. This is a dumb episode.
It's a bad episode. I don't like this episode. Like, the acting was great. I have to
Yeah, I
say the
mean,
parts of this episode were fantastic. There's very little I didn't like from what I saw on screen. You just did a Borg episode, and in order to do the Borg episode well, you have to let as you say, Mick, I'm going to let you say, what do you have to do with the Borg?
leave them alone. Stop trying to investigate who the Borg are. Stop trying to go back and saying this is their origin. Stop trying to add them. Leave them alone. If you wanted to have an encounter with the Borg, you could have literally just done it this way. But stop adding to it. Stop adding like, oh, there was contact here. The only time you should ever make a dramatic episode about the Borg and create a storyline other than they just want to assimilate you is when they're getting like you said, what's his name? Ian. Well, no, what was his name? The Borg from Next Gen that came
Hugh.
out of it.
Yeah,
Hugh. That's right.
Borg. Yep.
And then yeah, that's a great episode. Again, because he's coming out of being a Borg. 7 of 9 coming out of being a Borg. So these are going to create the drama that's really good. Every show that does, we're going to go back and retell the Borg. It never works, in my opinion.
And they don't let the Borg be the Borg. And
No.
it's what you got to do. 100%.
That's why it's funny because we're going to get into it on this week's Quarter Impulse too, which is kind of funny. And I'm not going to give away too much, but like Picard in all 3 seasons handled the Borg handled the Borg in different ways, and it was terrible except for the 3rd season when they just let the Borg be the Borg.
I don't know. I like the idea of it in the 2nd season. I really liked how they did that.
You and
I enjoyed that a lot.
We'll talk about it on Quanta.
We'll get
Quarter
there.
Impulse.
We'll get there. We got a ways to go.
I value your opinion, but we'll talk about it.
But yeah, so episode 23 is boo.
The
worst. Terrible. The worst this season. Every season Star Trek has one super bad episode. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Could be the greatest series that's ever come out. For some reason, there's one awful episode. And Regeneration was it.
I'm sorry, I was going to just add to that. I think from now on we should pick out best and worst.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Season wrap up, sure.
And I think Regeneration, I know we talked about it kind of in the first one, in the first half of the season, but there were no episodes. Marauders was probably the one that was closest and is not on the Regeneration level.
And honestly, Marauders is only frustrating because when you do something so many times, when you take that Magnificent Seven Samurai, whatever you want to call it, story, when you try to redo that, it has to be done perfectly. And I'm not saying everything has to be perfect. I'm saying your beats have to be right and your characters have to be someone I want to see you save. And if I don't want you to save them, you're probably not going to have a great episode. But it's still good. It's still a good episode. Regeneration is crap.
And then then we get to the next episode after that was a great episode, First Flight.
Amazing.
First Flight. Oh, after his close friend and colleague A.G. Robinson is killed in a mountain climbing accident, Captain Archer tells T'Pol about the Warp 2 test flight almost 10 years earlier, where A.G. and Archer were enemies. They were workplace sort of enemies. They were both test pilots, and A.G. was better.
Yeah, 100%. It's an Iceman Maverick kind of thing.
Yeah.
He was just AG was a better commander. AG was a more seasoned man, whereas
Mhm.
Archer was still shaking off the young. He
Yeah.
still had that impulsive, drastic, do the crazy thing because it could work out sort of
Mhm.
mentality. AG had kind of put that to bed and was trying to teach Archer to do that, but was also competitive himself. I mean, you're not going to be a super test pilot like that without having a lot of edge to you.
Yeah.
So, but respected each other, really liked each other, and I love how this informs on Archer a lot. It's a really great episode, and the fact that he's retelling this to T'Pol when they interject, when they keep shooting back, and T'Pol will be like, "Wait a minute, but you just said," and like it's great with her questioning about it throughout
Yep.
the whole time. It's really a great episode.
And she does a great job in that episode with the interest of learning more about him.
Hmm.
You
Yep,
know, so and really just I dug that aspect of it.
it was great.
Um,
Yeah, they made their B line tied directly into their A line. It was pretty rad.
yeah, I love when they do that. I love
Hmm.
when it ties in. All right, episode 25, Bounty, another good one.
Oh
After
yeah.
exploring an uninhabited planet, Captain Archer is taken prisoner by a Tellarite bounty hunter who was hired by the Klingons to return Archer to Kronos. Kronos.
Chronos.
Yeah, I don't know why I always screwed that up.
Because it looks like Quonos.
I can't even say English words right. I'm not going to say Klingon words, right? Come on.
How am I supposed to cling on?
I don't know what you mean, bro.
So it's pretty wild because Archer is in fact wanted still. Remember, he's got a life sentence looming over
Yeah.
his head on Kronos. One of the cool parts about this is we finally get a full-on interaction with the Tellarites. Before this, we had a few, like once I think on view screen and then once over comms. It's not often, Tellarites are there, but just kind of keep to themselves. And this one is a full-on Tellarite human interaction between Archer and this bounty hunter.
Which again, I love that. I love the opening that Archer was the first to, not the first to make contact with every one of them because he wasn't there for the Vulcans, but he
Hmm.
works closely with the Vulcans. First contact between humans and the Andorians
Hmm.
was Archer, and now the Tellarites and the humans are Archer. Well, maybe not the first contact.
Well, because Tellarites were
But
still shippers too. We all
yeah,
use
yeah,
similar shipping lanes. So the Tellarites, the Vulcans, and us kind of figured it out. The Andorians were a little further out.
yeah.
So yeah.
But this is more. I wouldn't again. I wouldn't put it as first contact, but I would put it as a. This helped bake the Tellarites into being one of the founding members,
It
and it
did.
was Archer's doing.
Yeah,
You
and it
know,
shows how that kind of came about because we're going to see eventually that the Tellarites are kind of the jerks out of
yeah,
everyone. The Andorians actually wind up being friendlier than the Tellarites, which is ridiculous, but
craziness.
it's
So
crazy.
and I love it because when you get down the line to U.S. movies or next gen and so on,
Hmm.
the Tellarites are very different. And
Yeah,
I'm not even talking about look. I'm talking about in how they act. Even the
hmm,
Andorians.
yeah,
You
they're
know,
all very different. That's hundreds of years. Well,
yeah,
100 years, maybe 60 years. But still, it's at a
yeah,
point where your federation is different. The Tellarites are presidents,
yeah.
like heads of the federation. It's pretty wild. So they did a good job in this one. I also really liked how the crew came together to save Archer.
Yeah, that's
They
very
figure out
true.
something's wrong. They're like, "Oh man, it was pretty good." Pretty good.
I also love the fact that by the end of it, like the Tellarite working with him
Hmm.
and how it played out for him to get away was very
Right.
cool. All right, let's go on to the next one, which is actually the season finale of 2, The Expanse. An alien probe launches a devastating attack on Earth that kills 7 million people. Archer, still being hunted by the Klingons, brings back the Enterprise back home to investigate, and Trip's sister is one of the fallen in the attack.
Yeah, man,
So it's
that was
a
rough.
tough one. This is where we get introduced to the Zindi,
Hmm.
which play heavily into the 3rd season. We'll get into
Pretty
that.
much all of the third season.
Yeah, and this is very much a 9/11 allegory. What's going on
Hmm.
here, and this being 2002, right after 9/11 had happened. The very next year, coming back out, you see a lot of parallels in season
Hmm.
3, which we'll get into in those episodes. But it starts here. This is, for lack of a better term, the ground zero of that propels Archer and Enterprise way farther than they've ever been.
Yeah, it gets us into an entire war. It
Yeah.
gets us into our first official intergalactic war. So, which is being done by Archer, who is a Klingon war criminal, and the Romulans have already seen, scanned, and like logged their ships, so they're kill on sight.
Yeah.
Like, we're not doing great. Enterprises
We
NX-01 this first year is hard. The second year is tough.
And you know what? The one aspect, because you find out with the Zindi, it all sort of changes. But why they attack Earth is because ultimately they believe that Earth is going to attack them. So they
400 years
take,
in the future.
so they take a preemptive strike on them. And again, we'll get into it when we get to third season. That's where things are really revealed. But I wanted to bring up in this one that how much of what Archer did and how much of his name getting out there screwed a lot of things up with a lot of species. Like we were talking about the Klingons and Romulans, but now even this expanse feeling like, yeah, we're gonna go take these out.
Yeah,
They're
because
crazy.
they're making a lot of noise, just knocking around, being loud.
It
We
really
do get
is.
some pretty cool stuff, though. I mean, we did get the Enterprise is retrofitted, so we
Yeah.
have photon torpedoes now. We have increased hull plating. We do have our phase cannon, so she's a strong little bird.
The Columbia gets announced in this, which is the
Yep,
second NX 02.
yep,
And it does not it does not leave port until the fourth season, so don't get
right.
too excited. We just in this episode it gets touched down on that is being built.
Yep.
Um
And then I believe they have it's the planetary defenses. We get to kind of see the planetary defenses and
yeah.
what it looks like and understand that there's a lot of warp 2 capable ships. Like we have a fleet, but
Yeah.
they stay close. There's not far for them to go. Warp 5
Yeah.
and above is where you start to be able to travel and really get some distance. So,
And I really love kind of where they went with this and in this episode. We'll get further on that. I'll expound on that later. But in this episode, I'm like I felt like they're really setting up something drastic like Shockwave did.
yeah.
And it turned into too drastic. And one thing I was talking about in the first episode that I kind of want to touch down on here is how I think Star Trek Nemesis as a movie influenced the third season.
Yeah.
And
All right.
and
Get
I'll
into that a little bit.
I'll talk about it more when we talk about the third season, but to touch down on it now, the action, everything that we get thrown at us in season 3 that starts here is very early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s action oriented. Like a lot of cliches there, getting into the war. It's not handled the same way. It's more man of action, whereas like when you watch the Dominion War in DS9, there's a lot of action, but it's mostly about figuring out how to end it, how to stop this, what's going on.
Right.
Whereas we're the ones who are gung-ho on revenge. We're hunting.
Yeah.
And it's a very different place. Now, how do I say that gets birthed from Nemesis is because Nemesis, in my opinion, out of all the movies, and there's some doozies, but out of all the movies besides JJ's, it's the one where it changed, especially the next gen movies, in a completely different direction that isn't Star Trek. It was an action movie. Everyone had
Yeah.
their action moments.
Yeah.
It was written. The guy who wrote it is an action writer. The guy who directed it is primarily like. So I felt like going into 2002 when they were going to put it out, Nemesis was like we're going to do more action. We need more action in these movies because Insurrection was more of a talking movie. Had a lot of great action.
I was gonna say I disagree, but I also understand that it was, and that's what I've always loved about Star Trek is give me my talking. We
Yeah.
need that. The personal connections are what continue to make Star Trek. The
Yeah.
growth of characters that comes through talk, and then the action is the culmination of either their growth or maybe falling backwards a little bit, and how they are going to have to redeem themselves from those actions. So I've always enjoyed that aspect, and you're right. Nemesis did not go that route. It went very much so actiony.
And the reason I say that is because I truly feel like for Insurrection, when Insurrection came out, that was the last movie in the Next Gen series. Of course, First Contact was huge. Insurrection did fine, but it just wasn't a box office hit.
It was not. Yeah, it made its money back. Was pretty average.
Yeah,
it was good.
A year later.
I mean, as a fan, I was a huge fan.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And I think for a long time, in the mix of Star Wars existing and Star Trek existing, everybody knew this is what Star Trek was. Everybody knew this was Star Wars. If you want that action war fighting, go there.
Go Star Wars.
Yeah, and we'll give you plenty of conflict, but it's going to be on our terms within our realm. And Nemesis is different in tone from that. It's more Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I think that's because the prequels started coming out. This is following on the heels of Attack of the Clones. And I mean Nemesis by that. So what do they do with the show, which this season 3 came out a year after, not even after Nemesis came out. So they were already filming it. So I think honestly, I feel like it came down. We're going this direction for Nemesis, and you guys aren't doing well on the show, so we need you to start going in that direction. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it makes sense to you, but am I making sense?
Or am I making sense?
Am I an incoherent bear shaking a rattler?
You have in fact said it properly, and I hear no rattles.
When I keep in mind, everybody, when I say, "Does that make sense?" That's not the shitty way of saying, "Does that make sense to your brain?" That's me saying, I don't know what I'm saying half the time.
Did these words come out good and stuff?
Yeah. If you feel like you have dyslexia after hearing me talk,
not completely uncommon.
But that is my theory, and I'm going to show a lot more comparisons to what I see and like touch down on more in season 3 about the Nemesis thing. But I wanted to open it up there because this is where it opens. This is where it's like we're going into action.
And this is where it happens, and it's a great way to end season 2 because it was still very promising to me. I really liked that they did this because absolutely someone would come blow us up after making up that much noise out in the earth, out in the universe. So it's only logical. Yeah, we'll talk about season 3 when we get there, but congratulations. That's the end of season 2.
But we're going to go over real quick. So let's go over our highlight characters of each episode. And we'll touch down on the half season. Stigma, what's your highlight for that? Who's your highlight?
Stigma, for me, this was actually one of those that I gave to Trip. I love Trip in this because I like seeing him trying to do what he thinks is the honorable thing, fighting his instinct of, well, of course I want to try doing this. Of course I'd like to hump her, but it's not right and it's not good. And it's very fun to see Trip become the litmus for what human being, I don't know, human beings and their idea of what's right, justice, what's the way things are supposed to be, moral and ethical codes being broken. Trip's moral and ethical codes constantly come into play. And this is a highlight of me for that.
It was a highlight for sure. I really like Trip. I'm going to give mine to Archer.
Okay.
Because I feel once he steps in and he learns the secret of what's going on with T'Pol and how upset he is with not just T'Pol, but Phlox for keeping it from him.
Yeah.
And the fight that he puts up with the Vulcan Council on what's what. And the fact that at the end of it, he stuck by what T'Pol's wishes were.
Yes, he 100% stuck by T'Pol's wishes, even though it could have bailed her out. Yeah. Even when the other adjudicator came out with it and came forward with it, and Archer's still like, nah, that's my crew and I respect her.
Yeah, like, and that pushed it even farther with her respect for him.
Oh, man, she just lit up over it. I mean, as much as she can. Once again, Jolene Blaylock is amazing. She's crushes being a Vulcan. Because we got to remember, we got Spock, half Vulcan. So that's who we know all this time. But T'Pol, as a full Vulcan and starting to really get into this experience of emotions is fantastic.
If you want to know how good T'Pol is in the show, and honestly, again, once we get to season 3 and 4 and how they did her dirty, in my opinion, but the first 2 seasons and even season 3 and 4, her reactions I'm talking about is from the beginning. T'Pol is mostly eyes, and what I mean by that is like her reaction really comes from her eyes. Like if they're dead set on you, it's almost like they feel lifeless because she's no emotion. But when she gets infected and slowly, and I went back and I was like looking for things, even before you find out about the neurological disorder,
Hmm.
her eyes start shifting. Her eyes start
Yeah.
getting weird. She starts looking more nervous. She starts
Hmm.
like, and it's all in the eyes. And then like she'll say something, but it starts there, and like that's great acting.
It really is. I mean, she has a few moments where I love in this season, she has 2 or 3 moments when she's leaving someone's quarters and wants to say one more thing,
Mm-hmm.
but doesn't.
Yeah,
And she does it so poignantly and perfectly, and her timing and the pauses that she takes and how she just does it, she really feels like there's because a couple of the times it's like when she wants to almost thank the captain,
yeah,
but you could hear her say it and then go, "That's illogical." You can hear her stop herself from
yeah,
saying it. It's awesome. So she crushes it.
yeah. Fantastic. Just wonderful. And I honestly like one of the best Vulcans in Star Trek history.
Oh, hands down.
You
Too
know,
good.
and I love Spock,
Oh yeah.
but T'Pol gives him a run for his money.
No, it's Paul's right up there, man.
All right. So now with Ceasefire, who's your highlight character?
Oh, this is Shran 1,000%.
Yeah, me too.
It's
100%
Shran
Shran.
all day. He's so
And then
good.
I'd like to say that's the last time I'll pick Shran, but I know it's not going to be.
No, Shran's too good. They bring
He's
him
so
back too
good.
well. He's a perfect Andorian. Susie Plaxton is right up there too.
She's
They
good.
they they just brought it, man. They brought it from two great perspectives. So I love that one.
Yeah. All right, we go to future tense. Who's your highlight character?
Yeah, this one was annoying. I don't know. I kind of bounced back and forth. I think Archer sometimes. I feel like that Reed had some good screen time in this one.
Yeah.
I don't
I, I
know.
I'm gonna give it to Archer because I do feel like in these episodes when it's poorly written, it's mostly Archer dealing with things. Now that's not him being poorly written. He knows his
No, that's
character,
yeah.
but he's at the forefront because I feel like whoever wrote these was either just trying to like go to the bathroom on time or get home on time or something, or like was a guest writer. But I have to look it up, but
Right.
it's a tough one.
Yeah.
Um, all right, the next one is who should I like character in
Panama.
Canamar?
This is actually an Archer for me all the way. I like seeing
Mhm.
him play that kind of a jerk,
Yeah,
kind of that punk role. Really love T'Pol in this one too when she's taking over on the bridge and she's trying to get her captain back. Like it was fantastic. She did a great job. Deserves a lot
good
of credit for
episode.
that. But Archer definitely gets the take here.
I agree.
He's the Nick Cage.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand. Agree, and I love that he plays it up too. All right, the crossing. Who's your highlight?
So this one I actually really like. I like Hoshi a lot in this one,
Yeah, you've
because
talked about that.
Hoshi's one of the last holdouts before she gets taken. So it's really fun to see her, Linda Park, really playing that, and then the turn she has, just it was great. I loved it.
Yeah, very cool. I would actually, for me, I'd probably go Reed.
Okay.
I really liked how Reed kind of played this one a little bit
Hmm.
because he's the first infected, and then just and the reason I'm saying is because maybe it's not Reed as the character, but the Dominic Keating
Hmm.
playing both those dual roles.
And
So
he does it really well.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we got next Judgment.
Archer.
Archer, 100%.
It's an
Like
Archer
we shouldn't even say
episode.
it's an Archer episode.
I mean, JG Hertzler is strong. You get
Yeah,
to see JG Hertzler hold his strong against Scott Bakula. You
he
know what I'm
is
saying?
very
Like,
good.
there's a reason he's a character actor, because I believe that Arbiter is screaming at him, fighting for his own soul. It's beautiful.
Horizon. I mean, clearly it's the girl who comes into his room and talks to him for 3 seconds.
Yeah, minute and 27-second Jane. We're gonna call her. She's great.
Oh my god.
It's
No.
so frustrating. I want more of the Mayweather stuff. No, but this is 100% a Travis Mayweather. It's a story. It was his story, and it was really well done, beautifully executed all the way through. I loved it.
Yeah.
Anthony
100% Travis.
Montgomery's stud in this.
Yeah. The Breach. Flocks
Mm,
for me.
I mean, I don't know how it could not be Phlox.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to choose someone else in that episode.
Yeah, it's just got to be Flocks.
Yeah, he's so good. And now I do love the B story, and I love the bickering whenever you pair up Trip and Malcolm. So together they work as a highlight, but really Phlox, because of the power he has in denying the order. That's the thing that blew my mind. When the captain orders him to do it and he says no, it's like,
Yeah. And
so
one thing I did like, and you reminded me about as we're talking about it, is the dynamic between Reed and Trip as they go on the spelunking mission with Travis, who's an expert spelunker.
yeah,
And he's happy to be doing it because he enjoys it, and he's annoyed because they won't shut up. They just keep
exactly.
complaining. It's so funny.
It's so good.
He's like, you guys are going to get us killed. And they eventually almost do.
They do. It's their fault. The freaking security officer always does the security breaches.
Always.
Always.
Wait till next gen.
Man.
Code janitor, who's your highlight?
I mean, I want to like anyone else, but Trip is Archer's the highlight here because of the chewing he gives
Yeah.
Trip. We really get to see Captain Archer have to do things because this is a family. We've seen them be a family and love each other and respect each other as a crew. And this is the one where Archer has to come down as the captain and say, yeah, look, you're my second officer, but you can't, that's not okay. And really reads him the riot act in a beautiful way.
Yeah. I'm going to go Archer on this one personally, for the same reasons.
Yeah.
Regeneration. I'm just going to say Archer.
Beat the Borg. Phlox beat the Borg.
Okay, I'll give it to Phlox. I love Phlox.
Phlox beat the Borg.
I don't even want to talk about it. Screw it. Phlox.
Let's keep going. Sure. First flight.
First flight. Archer.
T'Pol is great as a narrator in this episode.
Yeah.
I really dig that and seeing her kind of grow. But I love, was it Keith Carradine as A.G. Robinson? God, he was good, man. The two of them pushing each other as nemesis and just fighting. Oh, it was beautiful. And then working together at the end, it was perfect. I really enjoyed this episode.
It was such a good episode. All right, let's see what we got. All right.
Bounty.
Next is Bounty, which another Archer.
I mean, you can't. There's no one else to give it to. That's Archer.
All right, and then we finish off The Expanse. Who you got?
This one's a little tougher because everyone played the shock factor phenomenally well. I think everyone trying to deal with what happened was great.
Yeah.
But I think Archer still takes the cake in this one.
I'm going to give it to Trip, dealing with his sister, and not dealing with his sister.
I'll be honest with you. I would almost give it to Reed over that, just because the way Reed confronts Trip.
Yeah,
the way Reed brings it to his face.
That's a good one.
Understand what you're going through. Like, it's great. It was beautiful.
All right. So who's your highlight character for the whole half of the season?
Okay, so for this half of the season, my highlight character, I think, actually kind of works out to be Phlox.
Yeah, I mean, Phlox. I'd agree. Phlox.
I'm torn between Phlox and T'Pol. The reason being, we get to see these two aliens dealing with humans and growing themselves as they have more interaction with humans. We're also seeing T'Pol really come into her own. Jolene Blaylock has owned this character from beginning of the season all the way through. She's most consistent, most prominent, and does a fantastic job. Yeah. John Billingsley crushes it as Phlox. He gives us the slate of the other eyes. What would it be like if maybe our ethics aren't as ethically sound as we'd like? You know, and by being that mirror for us in our society, it means a lot when we find out that his society just wholesale infected a planet and tried to wipe them out. So, I mean, genocide on a mass scale, it's terrifying.
Yeah. Like you find out some rough things about the Denobulans in this.
Big time. So it's really great to see, but we also find the love in Feasel. You know, we get to see that side of the Denobulans. We get to see the episode where Night Shift, a night in sickbay.
Yep.
I mean,
that was earlier in the season, but yeah,
it was.
Another great one.
Season 5, but we get to see that growth of Phlox, and you continue to see that all the way through.
I agree. I agree with you on Phlox. For all the same reasons. Nothing really more to add to it. It's just he does a fantastic job. John Billingsley's acting in it is great, and you get to learn so much more. All right, best episode of this half of the season.
Uh, okay, well, there's two there because I have a best and I have my favorite.
Okay, what's your
I th-
best, and then what's your favorite?
I think the best for continuing on the story of an Archer-centric tale was First Flight.
Yeah,
I think learning the history of him, growing the relationship between he and T'Pol, and informing on who A.G. Robinson was, who drove him, I think absolutely makes it the best episode. My favorite, though, is Horizon.
it's a good one.
I think the brothers is just great. The bond is wonderful. Mayweather crushes it. It was really well done. Really well done episode.
My favorite episode of the season, and I put it down as the best in my opinion, is Cogenitor.
Man, it's so powerful. It was so powerful.
From beginning to end, and it also is one of those episodes as I was watching it, I was like, I'm with you, Trip. You're right. This is how it is, especially in today's society here on Earth. You're like,
Hmm.
you're right. You should be sticking up for this person, and helping them and giving them a chance, and then to see what it means ultimately. And not to say that it shouldn't happen. We're a different world, but that's the
Right.
takeaway is like, it's a different world. It's a different place, different time. You can't just step in like that. And to see it blow up in his face in such a
Yeah.
devastating way. It was heavy episode.
It is very heavy. And this season is really littered with amazing episodes. I
Yeah.
am so impressed with this season. So, how do you feel about your wrap up, brother? What do you got
Uh
for season 2?
you know what? It's a great season altogether. This second half really killed. I really did enjoy it. I really liked it, and it's a shame when we keep kind of going forward into season 3 and 4 because I just feel how strong this season was, and they just took it in the wrong direction, in my opinion. But yeah, I think it's actually the best season of Enterprise.
I agree. This is the best season of Enterprise. Probably this is a top 5 season of Star Trek for me.
I love
And
it.
I will, and that's only right now, though. I mean, as we're continuing this rewatch, that can change. Like, I mean, it's been a while for some of these.
True.
I haven't done burned through a TOS season like in its entirety in a while.
I know.
So, oh, it's going to be
Oh my
wild. And
god,
going back into DS9, I'm going to get some heavy hitters. I can already feel them out there.
they
And we
are.
got a lot of series in front of us, but this is a great series. And this was really the feather in their cap. This was when they were all running on perfect. They were cooking with oil. They were crushing it.
Yeah.
This was the best of the best for this cast and crew, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah, great.
so
Yeah, 100% agree. And if anybody is wondering what our worst episode was, go back and listen to us talk about regeneration. Right?
yeah, you'll get it.
So you'll completely understand what our worst was. All right, guys, I
Hmm.
want to say thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Warp Factor Fiction. Move on with us next month as we go on to season 3 of Enterprise and the Xindi War. It's going to be interesting, and we have a lot to say about it
Yeah,
as we go on. So please join us. We want to say thank you for being patron supporters. We appreciate you so much. Go check out our other show, Quarter Impulse. It's such a small 15, 20-minute show where we talk about different aspects that we really enjoy or hate about the Star Trek universe. And we've done a few so far, and you can go check it out about the Prime Directive and so much more. So go check those out. Let us know what you think. Sound off in the comments. Join up in the Discord because we're talking about it there as well. We're having fun conversations there. So, other than that, we love you. Check out the Scene Snobs wherever you are. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you guys very soon. Casey, take it away, my friend.
love and appreciate y'all as always. Thank you so much for being here with us. Hopefully, you enjoyed what you heard, and we'll get you into season 2 and prepped for season 3. So, as always, be kind to yourself, be kind to each other, and live long and prosper.